And then you get into this bump, like this group of teams that don't have much recent demonstrated success. And then it's like, I think they're sort of in that group where it's like there's a lot of reason for optimism, but you just haven't seen it yet.
Good morning, Albert. How are you?
Hey, what's up, guys?
All is good. We had Ryan Poles here on the show, and he said they're closing in on the Joe Thuney extension. I'm hearing it could be 2 years on top of the year they already have. And then we asked him about running back, and he said, well, I want to see what Roschon Johnson could do. He didn't really tip his hand on J.K. Dobbins or on Nick Chubb. What are you hearing out there in that running back market?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get into the spring, things slow down a little bit. You get past the draft, and so teams want to, get a look at the guys that they have brought in and how their teams are set up. And so, you have like I said, every so often you'll have guys that will sign in May and June. Like I think one example probably be DeAndre Hopkins a couple of years ago. Calvin Ridley, I think, was this time of year too, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, that sort of thing slows down in May and June, so teams can kind of get a look at their roster with their draft picks as part of it, and then go ahead and chart the course from there.
You know, it's funny, Cap, that we had a caller earlier from Hammond, Indiana, asking about Trevor Bauer, and would Trevor Bauer ever come back to the big leagues? Could he help the Cubs because of their issues with their starting pitching? And you said no, and we said no, you wouldn't do that. I just wonder how the football looks at Justin Tucker in this situation here, cut by the Ravens. Do you find, Albert, that he could come back, or is he persona non grata for right now?
Here's what I would tell you on that, Hoodie. I think guys' opportunities after they are involved in situations like this are a function of the talent that they have. In other words, if you guys remember, the Ray Rice situation happens, and Adrian Peterson and Greg Hardy, they had their own situations concurrently, right? Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, Ray Rice was the highest profile because you had the video and everything else. But I think we can agree that the Peterson and Hardy situations were also egregious. But I would argue the reason that Hardy and Peterson got second chances and Rice didn't was in large part because those guys were better players at that point. Peterson was still playing at an MVP level. Greg Hardy was a premier pass rusher, playing a premium position, Ray Rice, like the year before, had seen his yards per carry drop to 3.3. And so it was real easy at that point for the Ravens to aggressively cut ties because it was easier to replace him, where it would have been much harder for the Vikings at the time to replace Adrian Peterson, or the Panthers at the time to replace Greg Hardy. So those guys go on the exempt list, and things play out from there. So, and then those guys wind up getting more opportunities after that to continue their careers. Greg Hardy with the Cowboys, of course. I think that's, where this gets difficult for Justin Tucker is that if you're another team, you're going to look at it and say, well, really, what's the benefit? I mean, if we go and sign him, is the benefit enough to take on a month or 2 months or 3 months of really bad press, of our local media digging into what we're doing, of our owner having, his morals, questioned? Is that all worth it, And I know, that can sound like a kind of cynical way of looking at it, but I think it is a huge part of it. And I think, the reality is most people right now look at Justin Tucker as an over-the-hill kicker. And so, I'm not sure how many teams are sitting out there chomping at the bit to take on all the negative press they would get, because that's what it's going to be, right? Regardless of whether or not he's guilty of all the things he's being accused of, for what they view as a kicker who might not have very much left.
Yeah, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But then This is the same organization that drafted Mike Green. And as I'm watching the draft, I heard, I'm trying to remember which analyst it was on there, said, absolutely Steve Bisciotti, the owner, and he said they have the best security staff in the NFL. They vetted this, and ownership is comfortable. They'll take the hits from the fan base until he starts sacking quarterbacks.
Right, and what's at play there too, Cap? Like it's a guy playing a premium position,
just like you just said. Yep.
And the team sees a bargain, right? Like the team, like, well, there is no way this guy is sitting there in the middle of the second round if if these incidents don't exist.
Correct.
In a certain way, it's sort of similar to the risk they took on the Michigan pass rusher Ajabo a couple of years ago. Now that was an injury risk, right? Like if you remember, Ajabo tore his Achilles at the Michigan Pro Day, and so because like they've got stability and they've got like a lot of the things in place that would make it so like, hey, even if we don't hit on this, like we'll be okay. Like they were able to take the risk on David Ajabo in the second round a couple of years ago. Knowing that like maybe he's not going to be ready to go for this season. Maybe we have to redshirt him that first year. And, it's obviously very, very different cases, but it's another one where it's like you see, there's a value in the second round and you say, we got a chance to really get better at a premium spot. I think the hard thing about it is like, for me at least, like when I look at it, and this is just kind of like my cold analysis of it, is like how much did you hear from the Ravens that they were zero tolerance, right? Like after the Ray Rice thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember like the guys there saying like we have to operate by a different set of rules because we went through this. Is that really true anymore when you see them hang on to Justin Tucker for as long as they did until they found a suitable replacement? And then taking Mike Green in the second round, it becomes a little bit harder to look at them that same way after they do that.
But Albert, from a public relations standpoint on this, it's okay to be able to say, we know what's going on with Justin, and we feel like we're a better organization from the Ray Rice situation. We're moving forward. You won't be wrapped up in more of a lawsuit if you just say, hey, what was the term that we used, Cap? Just like not from a PR standpoint, but just because of the
backlash.
The backlash. You just don't want to deal with it, But they make it seem like it was for football reasons. Yes, he wasn't very good last year, but ultimately the reason why you're moving on is because you don't want to be party to this.
And he makes a lot of money, and he's got this sordid thing going on. Like all of it fit together.
The character issue, right? It's a character issue.
Here's the thing, Huddy. It's like if you were so disgusted by everything, why didn't you cut him in January?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the question. And it's like, okay, like, so if it rose to the level where you were so upset that he was involved in all of this, like you could have walked away in January, but you waited until May, so, I mean, in some ways it's funny because like, in some ways, like it actually was a football decision, like because you waited until you got to the end there. You waited until, all right, like now we have his replacement on the roster, so now we can move on.
In terms of the Bears ranking at 21 in the latest power ranking that we saw, look, they're 5-12. They've got to prove it on the field. I'm cool with wherever they ranked them, but I wouldn't have been against it if they were a little bit higher. What are people in the league telling you about where they think the Bears are today?
I mean, I think they're part of the best division in football is a big part of it,
Yep.
And so how do you look at that? And, are they different than the Patriots, who are 4-13 and have a young quarterback that they are optimistic on? Are they different than the Jaguars, who have a new coach coming in, who's got an offensive background to come and work with Trevor Lawrence? There are a bunch of teams here who weren't very good last year. Carolina, like Bryce Young, starts to flash at the end of last year. So, I would say the Bears are probably ahead of those teams I mentioned, but like the track record isn't much different, So I would say the Bears are in this group of teams right now where you maybe don't have the demonstrated history that this group is going to get it done, but there's a lot of reason for optimism. And so, if you put them 13, 12, then you're talking about knocking some teams behind them where it's like, would you put the Broncos behind them? Would you put the Cowboys behind them?
Nope.
Would you put the Packers behind them? Would you put you can do that. Would you put Seattle, who won 10 games last year, would you put them behind them?
Fair. You got to earn it.
So So that's the thing about it. And, these power rankings, look, like it's the same thing as mock drafts, right? Like, why do people do them? Because, they click and they create debates like we're having right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty irrelevant this time of year, but you can understand why. Like, there would be some of these other teams where it's like, well, we can't put them in front of these 15 teams or these 16 teams or these 18 teams. And then you get this clump, like this group of teams that don't have much recent demonstrated success. And then it's like, I think they're sort of in that group where it's like, there's a lot of reason for optimism, but you just haven't seen it yet.
Shay, could you give us that story that you just read around the NFL regarding Aaron Rodgers? What was the latest that you saw there?
Yeah, he was seen at the Kentucky Derby wearing a wedding ring, and so the tabloids wrote it up, and the Daily Mail is reporting that they spoke to a source close to Aaron Rodgers who said he is, found love and wants to be a father and is still considering retirement because if he ends up being a father and he wanted to be with the Vikings, he doesn't want to be with the Steelers that badly, retirement might be an option.
I need to get the Daily Mail's sources.
I'm telling you.
They're good.
They were all over the Belichick story last week too, man. Like I got the football stuff covered. These guys really know how to dig into their personal lives. It's pretty crazy.
Is Belichick hiring our guy Brandon Faber from Chicago?
I think Brandon could definitely help him.
Yes, he could.
I think what you're seeing right now is Bill had pretty good infrastructure around him in New England for all of those years, and I think pulling him out of that infrastructure and because remember, for 25 years he had that place wired, and really he had that place to a point. I think this is the thing that people aren't talking about. This is he had that place where he could really the whole do your job thing. He could excel at doing his job because there was a lot of stuff that he didn't have to worry about because he had it set up a certain way and had it set up a certain way for a long, long time. And now he's going to somewhere new. And even the idea that you could put somebody as an experienced, as his girlfriend is in charge of things. It's I think almost I don't want to say disrespect, but it's a lack of acknowledgement of what was around him in New England to kind of keep the train in the tracks so he could excel at what he's really good at.
That's Jesse Palmer, by the way. If you have his number, he works for Daily Mail TV. He's got all the scoops, Jesse Palmer.
Wait, is that Jesse Palmer, the former backup, the former Florida Gator and
yes.
and NFL backup and the guy from Bachelor?
Yes, that's him.
He works for the Daily Mail now?
Yeah, he's got it as a TV show.
How about that?
So he's got all the scoopage.
Wherever the money is, it's green. Wherever you can get it.
Yeah, well, if the Daily Mail has a lot of it, I think we all would be listening, right?
Yeah. So along those lines, though, Albert. So this whole thing with the Steelers, is it Aaron or bust? Because is it just me, or is it this isn't so un-Steeler-like to just be on hold? Usually they're pretty definitive, this is the direction, this is where we're going.
Yeah, I think they have an idea, and I do think he's going to wind up there. But I would also say until it's done, it's not done, and so. Whatever the personal thing, whether it's a marriage, whatever that Aaron's worked through over the last couple of months, I think we can all respect that, right? And I think the Steelers are well aware of how these things can turn, and so I understand where they would respect it too, and they would operate in a way where if they think they've got a really good shot of getting them, they would handle it and say, we're going to let this thing play out. And, we're going to respect Aaron and give him his space and let him know that we'll be here for him. And it's the risk you sort of have to take, I think, in this case, if you are the Steelers. My guess is the fallback would be probably calling the Falcons and seeing about Kirk Cousins' availability if this doesn't work out. But, make no mistake, they're still in on this. You know what I mean? And it's still a big part of their plan where – earlier in the offseason, you saw the Giants move on. You saw the Browns move on. We've seen different teams move on from even the idea of this. The Steelers have been pretty disciplined in staying in it, and we'll see whether or not they're rewarded for that.
Hey, man, have a great rest of your week. You're the best.
All right, thanks, guys.